And the leverage that you've got in your business is just, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to know how you did it. We're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like with the right leverage, almost anything is possible, right? And then it comes down to a few really simple principles that I've just figured out how to get into all the little parts of the business that are there anyway. Like it's not doing things that are not done anyway. It's just how we do them that's more leveraged. It'd be really interesting to talk about.
Awesome. Well, I want to get into that kind of recap of what we're talking about. The last video we talked about your business practice, the opportunity really to just live a free life. You could almost say you've got weekends with your family, you got weekends off. Your realtor partners don't call you on the weekends. You meet with your clients only a few days a week. So it gives you time to actually 2 full days a week, Monday and Tuesday, to work on your business.
Yep.
And you've got a waiting list of realtor partners.
Waiting list of realtor partners. Yep.
And
strong recruiting, like easy recruiting and high income. It's like that's in there too.
Yeah. You've got a loan. You just picked 2 loan officers. You got a whole real estate office, and you needed 2 loan officers. So you just went and got 2 good ones on demand.
On demand.
And, so I don't know that we introduced ourselves. So this is Paul Verkoven, lender, one of my really good friends. He's my lender partner. We've worked together now for like 6 years. And you've opened offices all across the country, worked for 30 years in the mortgage business. I mean, this is your life, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I think it's cool, like that we work together in the trenches, like doing this stuff. So everyone, this is Charlie Madison, my good friend and partner in crime here with a lot of this stuff. And Charlie's a realtor, and has been for many years. And these concepts are things that we're like putting into practice in a real life business, and it's kind of cool that we have both perspectives, the lender side and the realtor side. And here we are talking about leverage and how, like, I have a waiting list of realtors, and then like Charlie, you have a perspective on that being a realtor, you know what I mean? And like, it's cool to share these things that we've learned that are so effective.
And, so I had to jump through hoops to be able to work with you, like we met at the mastermind in San Diego. And then I found out you could actually work in Tennessee. And I mean, I happily jumped through the hoops.
Yep.
And now we've been working together for 6 years. And, one of the cool things is like, I can tell my clients, look, Paul only works with a handful of realtors around the country. I had to jump through hoops to be able to work with him. So I'm able to give you, so it positions you with my compliant clients so well. And then when you reciprocate that to me, I mean, it's which, I think we're going to talk about kind of how we did that, but it's just amazing that the fact that you are scarce and that you only work with a handful of people, when my clients experience you, when they feel that, but then it just like, I'm not just another realtor. I've got something special in my pocket, a lender. Thought that's possible, but it's true. Like in a lot of work, you're my superpower.
Yeah. You know what, man, like what's amazing in that, what you're sharing there is like, that's an illustration of some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, like in this conversation, right? In this share, because and we said this a minute or two ago, is like what I've learned is, and you have too, is with the right leverage, like almost anything is possible. And the way that I'm working the schedule I am, and recruiting the team I am, and earning the income I am, and like in the lending business, talking about that, is it's all leverage based. It's all leverage based. And one of the things that we've learned is that there's a few really important pieces of leverage that if you weave them into what you do, you can create all this. And what you're talking about there, I love it, is an example of that, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the scarcity piece. But those principles are what we're talking about today are the Cialdini principles, right? Of creating compliance. And say more about that. Like the Cialdini, like who's that? Like what are these? What are we talking about?
Robert Cialdini, in a way, he's kind of the godfather of influence and persuasion. You know, he's a professor at Arizona State. And I think the way, you know, some of you may have heard of him. He was a professor at Arizona State in the 80s. He wanted to study influence and persuasion, what makes people compliant. And so he created his doctorate over it. He became an expert in it. And he wrote a book, Influence: The Factors of Persuasion. And he came up with 6 things. There's 7 now, but he came up with 6. And he wrote this book to warn consumers, like, hey, this is how you're being persuaded. Don't let it happen against what you want. But of course, the funny thing, do you think any of the consumers cared?
But the marketers of this world sure did.
The marketers loved it. And him being a smart person, he pivoted, and now, you know, he gets paid $250,000, maybe more now, for a 30-minute keynote.
Right.
And
to marketers.
Right, to marketers and business people. Yeah. And I mean, really, that's the basis for our compliant clients. And I've got a little picture here of what the 6 shortcuts are. Let's see if this shows up.
It'll pop up.
And do you see that picture there? Does that show up?
It's popping up. There they are.
These are the 6 shortcuts. 1 is reciprocity. 2 is scarcity. 3 is authority. 4 is consistency. 5 is liking, also known as similarity. And then 6 is consensus, or what we know as social proof.
Social proof, yeah.
And just imagine if you can, you don't have to do anything different, but how do we layer this in? And that's what we've done. How do we layer it into every part of our business? And I think you're going to share how you've done that with a couple of these. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll take a dive into a couple. And I think one thing I want to say is, like, that idea of leverage as a lender is it's so powerful, those 6 principles. So one thing I've done is learned how to weave all of them into what we do. Whether it's a pre-qual, the way we talk to a client the first time, the way I talk to a realtor, it's layered into everything. And as an overarching idea, before we dive into a couple of these and some specific examples, like the overarching idea is, can you take those 6 principles and find ways of upping your game on how you weave them into what you're already doing? Like, it's not about some newfangled thing, a lead system, no, just the things you're doing already, do them in a way that creates consistency, liking, scarcity, right? Like all those things. And what happens, what I've learned is when you do that, your leverage goes 20x and your results go 200x. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much leverage when you create compliance. And I'm not talking about the compliance department.
Boo, underwriter.
I'm saying when your clients become compliant, or your realtor partners or referral partners, it's a whole different animal, completely different. So yeah, let's dive into a couple of these. I think a great one to start with is reciprocity. Like, the idea is, if I give you something, then you feel like you have to give me something, right? That's a human, and it's a beautiful thing, right? It's why when we lead with a giving hand, we get more back in life, right? But
one of the things that I love, Robert Cialdini in his book, he talks about this, and he uses the example of the Hare Krishna in the subways. Yep. The way that they would raise money is, and I've never seen it, but they used to walk and give someone a flower.
Oh yeah, I got that in the airports back in the day when I was.
You've got it. And then they would ask for the donation.
Right.
And what he said was fascinating. Like, it's like you said, it's ingrained in us. Like, when we give, like, the majority of people reciprocate. There's takers, but the majority of people, like, you feel compelled to give back. And so what people started doing, they started saying, I'm not going to take your flower. They did, like, they couldn't help the feeling. So like reciprocity, it's deep within us.
Right. Well, and so here's
How do
an
you use that?
example I think that every lender colleague in the industry can relate to. I remember when I was starting out in the business, I had moved to a new area, literally like knew zero realtors there, and I was starting my business, but I knew enough about it to know what to do, so I wanted to develop some realtor relationships, right? And so what happened is I did the classic realtor thing of show up with the coffee mug and a rate sheet, a little bit of that. But that's only so effective. So I started thinking, if I could bring a client to one of these realtors, if I could give them a deal, then I'm going to get a deal back, right? Like it's the best thing with a realtor. If I can come to a realtor bringing them deals, like I own that realtor. It's not hard. But if
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, as a realtor, that's all I want. I want clients that close easily. I mean,
right,
if you bring me clients, and that's one of the things in our relationship.
yep,
Like, the truth is I had a great lender that I worked with.
yep,
And, he eventually got mad and said, why are you not sending business my way? And I said, I've been asking, like, can you help me with business? I was like, Paul, he's given me 5 or 6 deals a year.
yep,
And you got your other lender or your other realtors.
yep.
And, my lender, he looked at me, said, yeah, I can't compete with that.
Right, right. Well, and that's so telling, right? Because it makes sense, right? If I'm a realtor, that I make my living on deals, just like we do as lenders, and a lender who's bringing me deals, like there's a reason that reciprocity is so powerful, right? But
Right.
here was the challenge I was running into, and maybe your old lender's running into this too, right? Is like I was in this area and I would have a deal like every month or two that I could give to a realtor. Like I would turn one up from somebody I knew. I remember I'd sit there, I'm like, okay, I got a deal. And I'd be like, now here's the 6 realtors that I want to, work with. Who do I give this to? And it'd be less like this deliberation. And then I'd be like, oh man, I wish I could give one to everybody. And like there just wasn't enough to do that. And so what I've learned to do is to be able to do that with every realtor. That's taking the reciprocity game up. Like that's upping the game. Like if you could do that with an unlimited number of realtors, bring them business like that's a game changer. In video 3, we'll teach a couple ways to actually like do that, right? In more detail. But what I want to say is, one way of doing that that's amazing is to get really good at earning the referral from that client and process. Like if I'm talking to that client already and I can master that, right, to the point where in my experience, my business, when I do a pre-qual, I get a referral, and I'm doing the pre-qual anyway, right? Like I'm going to spend the time with that client doing that thing. Why don't I get a referral and bring that to the realtor? Like this is a leverage mindset. We're trying to share a leverage mindset. Like I'm doing this stuff anyway. How can I weave principles of influence into it? Well, if I can get something out of this that I can give, now I got some more compliance coming my way. You know what I mean? In terms of realtor partners. So that's
Are you
really
going to share? Are you going to share how you get a referral? Because it's true. Like I'm thinking of our client Danny, who now has sent us 9 clients. Something crazy like that over the last 4 years. It's not a reciprocity, but are you like? I'm guessing you've got a system for it.
totally a system for it. Absolutely. And I'll explain it quickly. Like a training on this is a whole video. Okay. But the quick idea is that if I can make my pre-qual appointment so awesome, such an amazing experience for somebody, then what I do is I ask people to refer folks to that process. The mistake I made before is I would wait till the end of the deal. I'd be there at closing, at the closing table, and like, back in the day. And I did say, and hey, if you know of anybody, keep me in mind. Like that was my referral ask. And I would get some referrals that way, but the big change for me was take it all the way to the front. I get the referral in the pre-qual. I get more along the way too. I get it right away. I don't want to wait for it. And the way I do is when I start the pre-qual, I just say to people at the very beginning, like literally right at the beginning, I tell people what makes me different. I give them my, everyone in this business has their thing that makes them special and unique. So I give them mine, my USP. I'm like, here's what I do. Here's what makes me special. And then I just say to people, you are going to notice as we move forward together that from time to time, I'm going to ask you who you may have noticed who could use my help. And the only thing I ever asking working together is that if you love this experience, when you notice somebody that's going to help, get us together. That's what I call planning a referral ask seed. I'm doing that in the first minute or two of the pre-qual. That's not a typical lender play that I've noticed. But it starts like this. Hey, new client, let me tell you a bit about what we do that's different and special, and I list my things. And what mine are isn't important. Everyone in this business has their things. You just insert yours. Hey, client, here's what we do that's awesome. Here's what I do that's awesome. And I'm so excited for you to get this experience. And by the way, one thing you're going to notice as we move forward together, however that looks for you, is that I'm going to ask you from time to time, who you may know who could use help. If you love this experience, that's all I ask. Everybody says yes to that. Everybody. And the trick is, if I'm boiling it down, is I do a great pre-qual appointment. I make it memorable, awesome, not the typical experience. And at the very end, I just say, hey, like at the very end, you remember how I said when we first started talking, from time to time, I'd ask you, I just want to ask you now, like you've just had an experience of what we do. Client nods yes, because they just did. You've had a little taste of it. And, I'm just curious based on that of all the people, who might this be good for? And the crazy thing about that is that what I'm really asking for is a referral to that process, not for a loan.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Refer to a loan.
Yeah, it's to that process. Yeah. Everybody thinks of somebody in aggregate. There's some who don't, but some people think of 3 people. And then those all become referrals that I work with that client to go get into conversation and bring them back to the realtor. And that is an amazing example of taking something I'm already doing. I'm doing a pre-qual anyway. I'm going to weave this idea of reciprocity in, right? Which is I'm going to earn this referral and bring it to a realtor partner. Now, when I do that, I'm bringing a referral to every realtor I work with, every time I work with a client. And that builds reciprocity that is, we'll just say strong.
Strong. And what's unique about that, I've noticed now, me and my team, if I talk to someone that's 2 or 3 years out, I still want to connect them with you. And with no pressure, like, hey, 3 years out, because there are things that they can do now that can save them tens. I mean, we know this tens or $20,000.
Yep.
And the fact that, you are scarce, I can say, look, but he spends time with the people I care about. Yep. And you do a strategy session with them. I want to get you, I don't care if it's 3 years, 2 years ahead, because you consistently get a referral out of that. Yep. That may be sooner. Yep. And which just strengthens our bond better, right?
The whole thing. Yep. Yeah, so it's these like working with these concepts, when you really take them deep and put them into the nuances of what you do, it changes your business. That's been my experience, like literally. And reciprocity, I think everyone gets it. Like, imagine you can go to every one of your realtors and give them a deal every month. Like, what happens? Or what if you're doing that with 2 realtors now, but you could do that with 10 realtors? What happens? Right. Now, we're going to teach some other ways of doing this, right? Like in the next video, there's some other systems and ways that we create that for realtors. But this one I'm explaining now is one. It's so simple. You're doing a pre-qual anyway, right? Like, right. Yeah. It's something you could just, it doesn't cost any money or any more time.
You bring me one and turn that into 2. I just got 2 deals out of the blue. That's
Right.
amazing.
Right. Yep.
All right. So what is, let's see, the next one, we got a bunch of them. I like social proof.
Yeah, I think so too.
Consensus, as Robert Cialdini calls it.
Consensus is what he calls it. Yeah, social proof is, everyone else is doing it, I should do. Right.
And that's built into us, right?
I think that a lot of this is another thing where you just start thinking about how to up your game with things you're already doing. And one of the things that comes to my mind is, social proof. A great place for that is with reviews and testimonials, right? Like the reason reviews are so powerful is, if somebody Googles you and they see all these other people talking about you, it's social proof. Like, wow, everyone else loves this person. I'm sure I will too, right? That's a great example of it. Or same thing with testimonials, you get them on your website, people visit it, they see everyone talking about you, social proof, right? Powerful.
Right. It's not what you say about you, it's what other people are saying.
Other people say, yep. So I think that the one thing that's always struck me is that a lot of the lending industry does social proof in a passive way. Like, a lot of mortgage companies and firms, are great. Like they provide things that survey clients that close and get testimonials. They ask for reviews, which is awesome. And then the thing about all that that's always struck me is it's still passive. Like somebody's got to go looking for that, right? Like I've got to Google you to see your reviews, or I'm going to go hit your website and look at what people are saying about us, right? Like I've got to go looking for that, which is fine if I want to see that. But I think that a great way to up the social proof game is to become active with it. Meaning, like, how do I put that in front of my clients? Ideally, every day.
Right. So
right?
How do you do?
Well, I think there's different ways, like going with a theme of leveraging things that we're already doing, nothing new, nothing that costs more money, right? For one thing is, can you start putting testimonials in an email signature line? Right? Just so that when you're emailing somebody, they're seeing other people talking about you. Is that more powerful than the link that says apply here?
Right.
Not that it's either or, maybe you have both, right? If you want the link. But what I'm saying is like the link that says apply here, or the little tagline, your most awesome mortgage person. Okay, that's all good. But you start showing me other people talking about me actively, that's social proof, right? Where are the places I can put that? I think that's one place that's super powerful, easy to do. Here's another one. If you're somebody who does social media, and not everybody does, and you don't even need to in this business, but if you are, like, can you post some of those comments, right? Post that stuff rather than wait for people to go look for it. Right? Imagine that you do that once a week or even once or twice a month. Like here's the last 10 comments, post that.
Yeah.
Right? It's so I think that kind of thing is powerful stuff. And the same thing with with reviews, right? Testimonials, reviews, they can all be packaged in that kind of way. Get them actively in front of folks.
That makes a lot of sense.
Another version of that too, in addition to testimonials and reviews, which I think a lot of people think of, there's also success stories. Success stories are powerful because your client doesn't necessarily know the other things you do, right? So if you can start showing your sphere, oh, here's an investor I just helped. Here's a first-time buyer. Here's a person moving up. Here's a person moving down. Here's a person with low credit scores. Here's a person with lots of cash. Here's a person beating cash offers. I don't know. Right? When you tell those stories and put them in front of people, it's social proof because they're starting to see like, whoa, here's all the folks you work with. And another version of that I love even more, this is like my favorite of all, is can you post the names of people who've been referred to you in the last 2 weeks, last month? Here's all of our new clients. Not last names, right? Because we got to be private, but Chad and Jennifer, Robert, right? That's another thing. Just the list of who's been referred or all of the new clients from the last month. Can that get posted? Right? These are all ideas of taking the idea of social proof, which is people are loving what we do. People are seeking us out. We're helping all kinds of people. But instead of passively having it out there, like actively put it in front of folks, right?
People want what other people want.
They want what other people want. And the more they see other people having it, the more they want it. That's also true.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And a distinction here too, or an addition, I would say, is to really think about how to do that with your past clients. It's good to have this in front of the current active ones, for sure. Like an email signature line does that for the people you're currently working with, fantastic. And then the question is, well, if you're doing a newsletter to your client base, or you have an email campaign, or, you know, people do different things, but ideally you have something going to your past clients to stay top of mind. Making social proof part of that so powerful.
And
So,
I love the 6 questions that you ask to get the testimonial.
yep.
Maybe if someone emails you and asks you if you can send that, maybe you can send that to them.
I'd be happy to do that. Yep. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, because part of this too is if you ask the right questions, then you get the kind of testimonial or experience that creates more social proof because of the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Basically more understanding. So these are nuances. Like you start to think like, well, what do I want somebody to say about me besides, oh, you're great? That's okay.
Yeah. I think my favorite recently was, instead of just Paul's great, and I don't remember exactly which client it was, but they said, I felt like I was running a far distance and I didn't know where to go. But now it's like a marathon and I've got my checkpoints and I know exactly where to go. Like, man, now that is a cool testimonial.
It's a metaphor.
You're right. And the way you get those almost every time is amazing.
Well, and that's by design too. Like you start to ask the question. It's like leading the witness, kind of with their thing, but like saying to somebody like, if you had to describe your experience working with us as a metaphor, what would that be? I can ask that question. That's one of the 6. Gets you those kind of answers. And then if you show that to your client base every month, what you're doing over time is creating incredible influence based on shielding these principles, right?
Right.
And the longer you do that, the stronger that influence gets. And the stronger it gets, the more compliant clients you have.
It's like compounded interest every single day.
It is. Yeah, it's like I think a lot of people look at their client base as, repeat business, which it is. It's refi business. It's repeat when they move or move up or move down. But I look at it as like a brokerage account. Like there's so much opportunity for compound interest there if I do it right.
Mm.
And the way I get that is by building influence. I get more referrals that way.
Right.
And more compliance.
That's awesome.
Because let me say this. There's a distinction, really important distinction in my mind between word of mouth versus like rabid referral. Word of mouth is like, oh, hey, I heard about you from my friend so-and-so, that call, versus like my client grabbing the person they hear by the shirt collar and going, look, this guy's amazing. He's not easy to get in with. I can probably get you in there. Let me hook this up.
Right.
That's a totally different animal when it comes in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And you do all this working appointments 2 days a week with nights off, except for a couple nights a week and weekends off, right?
Yes. Yep. Wednesday and Thursday nights. That's it. Those are the only days for clients, and then weekends off. Yeah.
You're not meeting people every day for lunch and coffee and making 60 to 100 calls and
Doing none of that. I'm just dealing with folks calling up and being like, hey, And some folks could say, you've been doing this a long time, that's why, right? That could
Right.
be. But I'll say this, I started with these principles. I started with them in the mid-90s and wove them into my business. And within 4 years, had a business that I could sell. Doing exactly what we're talking about now. So it's not, this stuff has nothing to do with how long you've been in the business. This has to do with leveraging what you're doing and really going deep with principles of influence. If I'm going to spend time with somebody as a client, I don't want the loan. I want the influence.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I see it. It's not about the loan. I want to create a deeply influential situation.
And I
So
love it when you do that. It helps me. It makes the client close easier, in the crazy market, they made the offer that it took to close,
Yep. And we get the referrals and like the whole, and that makes it possible for you to have a similarly awesome schedule because you do a similar thing in real estate where you're earning a high income and not putting too many hours in a week.
People don't believe I work 15 hours a week in my practice with my small little team, and our clients just love us.
Yep. Yeah. So, but that's based on influence. You're doing this stuff as a realtor, and then we do it together, and that creates a 1 + 1 is 11 factor too.
Yeah, and part of that's the authority. Like when you've got scarcity, you become the authority. And when I introduce my clients to you, you're viewed as the authority now, and then you turn it back and you position me as the authority. And so I love it when my clients come back after their pre-qual with you, they got stars in their eyes. They're tell me what to do, Charlie.
Right. Yeah. And for everyone, watching this, like that's an example of how a lender and a realtor can start to co-create this stuff. And that's a whole other, but actually we'll talk more about that too in the next video, because there's ways to do that with realtor partners, taking these principles and co-creating some of this stuff. And that goes exponential. It's really cool. But social proof, coming back to that, of the few things we're talking about in this conversation, very powerful. I love the fact that most lenders are already doing some of this. And it's just a question of like, how can you get from the passive way to the active way, right? Like get it in front of your people. Don't wait for them to look for it, especially your past clients, also your active clients, get it in front of them. And maybe how you up your game on what that content is, the way you ask for it, what kinds of things you show, who's been referred this week, who've I helped, what kinds of people, as well as testimonials. That's super powerful. And when you do that, it creates a lot more compliant clients from your database, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And you, Charlie, you were mentioning, and we were going to talk about this too, this concept of scarcity. Like you've mentioned that a few times in this conversation already. And I think from that list of 6, we'll hit 3 in this video, but that's a powerful one too.
Yeah.
What comes up for you around that scarcity as a realtor?
One of the things that I love to tell my clients is that I only work with a few clients at a time, and they'll never, the only people that I work with are people that I know or that are referred to me, and like that's a form of scarcity that makes me more valuable. When I run my open house, one way that I've built the scarcity, I remember the first time I did this, another realtor called me and said, "Are you really doing a 30-minute open house?" I was like, "Yep." But what I do is I've got a 2 to 2:30 open house. And what happens is everyone that's going to see it first, they see it first because all of them start at 2. So I'm the first one. And everybody's there and everyone's running through the open house. And people want what other people want. And people want, more people are, it's true. I think Cialdini says this, people are more inspired and persuaded by fear of loss than gain of their desire.
Yep.
And so when they see everyone else running through like ants, it makes them overlook the blemishes, makes them want it even more.
Absolutely.
And so like, how can I incorporate scarcity? Because scarcity increases value.
Yeah, 100%. I love the open house example, right? You can just picture it, like everyone's there at once, like, whoa. And
Yeah.
there's only so many minutes, and
And then, sometimes, I end up being there an hour because some people show up and like they're sitting there, they're loving it. And they're like, I'm sorry, they're apologizing for taking,
yeah,
a few extra minutes. But it works, all the time. Like it just works because this is the way people work, right?
Yep.
Like they want what is scarce.
it's how it's wired. And I think as lenders, this principle is so important because lenders and realtors too, but lenders for sure, it's such a battle to uncommoditize ourselves, right? Like really, why for me as a lender, why influence is so important is it's how I uncommoditize myself. I don't want to be 30-year fixed. And what's your rate ever? You know what I mean? Ever. Because that's a race to the bottom. There's no way of ever winning that game. At volume.
Right.
So I don't want I don't just want it to be about that. And one thing that I've learned is that these principles, they create value actually. And because of influence. So scarcity, oh, it's so important. I think as a lender, there's two things that come up. And one of them is the concept, and I think we all know this, like scarcity it's not about reality, it's about perception. Right? It's if I'm perceived as scarce, that increases my value. I don't have to be scarce, just have to be perceived that way. So, what we start thinking about is, okay, how can I take what I'm doing already and just make it be perceived as more scarce, right?
So is that one of the reasons you have appointments 2 days a week?
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if I were working with an LO, on my team, for example, who doesn't have the same schedule as me, my coaching is always like, hey, when the client calls, you don't have time for them then. Like the worst thing to do is like, oh, great, great that so-and-so introduced you. Yeah, okay, great. Now tell me where you work. No, you'd be scarce. Actually, I'm right between appointments today. I'm booked straight through, even if I'm not. Right? I make myself scarce. I've got a little time tomorrow at this time, or the next day at that time. Now, me, I have a schedule, I think, but I'm saying even somebody who doesn't do that, you just make yourself scarce. Like, whoa, this person's in demand. They're completely full. What am I doing? I'm creating scarcity.
Right.
Right. But
the way that I've done that, I viewed it, like my dentist or my doctor, when I set an appointment, I just give them 2 dates. Like I just, even if my calendar's wide open, I'm like, does tomorrow at 1:30 or 3 work best?
Yep.
And we may have to modify it a little bit, but like that right there, if I said what time works for you, they'd pick 7:30 at night when I'm with my kids.
Yep.
But I work I just got back from the dentist last week. I work my schedule around it,
Right.
And,
that's right.
So I don't have certain days blocked off as much as whenever they call, I just give them, sometimes.
Yep.
And again, it just sets this professionalism and scarcity.
Yeah, time control is a big one, and limiting it, like literally limiting it. So there's a lot of ways to do that. I love using a calendar app and just only having a little bit open. That's a great one. People in this business do this in different ways, but the concept I want to say is like, think about this now. How can you make what you do more scarce? Not because it is really more scarce, but because of the way it's perceived, right? And you're never available when the client calls and wants to get started, ever, in my mind, ever. It's
Yeah.
always like, I've got 5 minutes now between things. I'm booked the rest of the day. It's really like booked up this week. There's a little time there Thursday at 4 and maybe Friday at like 1:30. You hear that? Like, that's really different than if they're calling someone else. And then time control takes that further. In my case, there's 2 days a week that you can see me if you're a client. And you know what I mean? That makes it even more scarce. And that's funny, right? Like, I think a lot of folks maybe have resistance to that. We make money when we do deals, and when one comes, like, what if I lose it? And like, but what I've learned is that if there is one there that I lose, that's somebody who's not going to respect my time to begin with. Probably not the highest quality client. And other than that, that scarcity builds my influence, which puts me in a more powerful position. So I'm not an interest rate and a loan term, you know. There's another side of this, which is with realtors. And I think this is, as a lender, super important too, is like legitimately, and we talked about this in the last video, like, I have a waiting list of realtors. I love having a waiting list of realtors who are waiting for the opportunity, to work with me. That is a game changer, right? And I've even heard you express it, like, you are aware of that. You say that to clients, right? That changes
Right.
the way they see me. I'm gonna
Which
have,
I was silent because, again, that seems like, I know you, so I know it's true. But in some ways, it seems impossible to believe, And but it kind of reminds me of, you've got your kind of who you work with. And Alex Hormozy, I love his book. He talks about scarcity. And he used to sell gym memberships. And you go to any normal gym, they're trying to sell you, first month's free. We take everybody, it's $10 a month. And what he did, he flipped it on its head and he said, all right, I'm going to market and I'm looking for 10 people who want to earn this free thing over 6 weeks. And, he built this whole offer around it. And I like what he said. He said, always sell less than the demand. You always want a waiting list.
Yep.
Because if there's a waiting list this time, when it opens back up, they're going to want it more. If you feel the, I mean, think of it with, homes. Home prices jacked up because we had less supply than demand. And,
Yep.
Now, in Nashville, prices are going down because we got more supply than demand.
Yep. No, it's true. And then, okay, well, how does one get a waiting list of realtors? Like, that sounds like a good idea, right? But like, as a lender, well, so, I mean, we'll teach some more of this in the next video, like, some deeper methods. I would say here for the concept, though, I was talking earlier about that idea of earning a referral from every pre-qual, right? Now, if I go out and I say I do a presentation to 6 realtors and I say, hey, I've got this system where, I earn a referral for you. And in that way, I can help you double your business in the next 12 to 18 months. I got 2 openings right now because it takes time. Like, it's a partnership, like, I got 2 openings. And let's say I put 6, 8, or 10 people on a Zoom or in a room, and I teach them what I do and what the partnership is. Like, I make my offer, like, we're going to do this together and that and this and that, and this is what's going to happen. You get a waiting list. Like, there's more than like you said, I sell less than the demand, right?
Right. And I've seen you do it.
Yeah.
And your offer is good. And you're like, we're going to try out each other.
Yeah.
For 90 days.
We'll try it for 90 days. And that's another point too, right? Like, it's almost like I make scarcity happen there too in the offer. Like I need to see if I even want to work with you, and you need to see if you want to work with me. So if you like this idea, like, we'll try it for 90 days. I got 2 slots, first 2 people, and then at the end of 90 days, we'll see. Well, for me, part of the waiting list is at the end of the 90 days, a lot of those people I'm putting on the waiting list for my team because they're not the person for me. That's not the way most loan originators operate, in my experience.
Right. Which is why you're able to get to LOs on demand when you need it. Because you're like, hey,
Yeah, and that's an anecdote. There's a bunch of them, but that particular one, there were 6 or 8 realtors in an office that went through a trial, and then suddenly the whole office was really into what we do, and it was like, I got a whole office. You know how easy it was to recruit 2 LOs for that? It took, I don't know, a week. But you know what I mean? It's just,
right.
it's easy.
We didn't have to fly them to Philly and roll out the red carpet and wine them and dine them and
none of that stuff. So scarcity is powerful, with the realtors. I really love that. Here's another one, like just becoming an expert. And this is, going to date this, but as we're recording this, we're in a tight market, right? Like competition for houses. I don't know. We're good at getting people in. And, if I've got good stats on getting people in, that's worth something, right?
right.
You find what your thing is that's worth something, and then create, you sell a couple seats, and they have more demand than that. But for me, we'll show a little bit of some marketing ideas that you can do with realtors that they might want in the next video. But as a concept, in this conversation, I love this thought. Like, if I'm going to earn a referral from every client, I know that the loan officer that most realtors are working with are not doing that. And so if I have a little workshop and I'm like, look, here's how we do it. We work as a team, here's how you send them to me. So they're sort of prepped. And then I do this thing. And here's how I send them back. I got 2 slots for 90-day trials. There's 8 people in the room. And you know what I mean? It's like, and then there's the waiting list, and off we go. And I do that with different systems in my business, but it's the same idea. I have a waiting list.
I love what I read again by Alex Ramosi. He said marketing has 2 goals. Like the first goal of marketing is to increase demand, of course. But then he said the purpose of limiting supply is to increase the value.
Yeah,
because over time you make more while enjoying your life more.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I love that.
Yeah. Well, and in a real direct correlation, like if looking at my business, it is, like I earn high margin on loans. I'm not selling loans for cheap. I've got my time under control. You know what I mean? Like, it's an example of it.
Right.
And I can earn overrides by recruiting people very easily. I do that. But it's based on these principles. You know what I mean? It's and we're taking a few of them here and talking about them a little bit deeper, but they all apply. But these 3 are great ones to start with. I feel like reciprocity, that's a great one. How can I up my game with that, right? How do I take social proof? Like, I'm doing that. How do I get out of the passive mode with that into the active mode where I'm actively showing my people social proof, and then how do I create scarcity, and doing that with my time is one way. And doing that with realtors is super powerful.
Yeah.
And like all these activities I would be doing anyway. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't some like newfangled thing, or just tweaking what I'm doing already.
You don't have to spend 4 months learning how to do something completely different or
spend a bunch of money on some lead system that never works, or like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just, or like buy a bunch of coaching and that stuff. It's fine. But I'm just saying, like, we're in the business, like you and me, we're in the business, you know what I mean? And what we've shown is just by focusing on these principles and figuring out how to drive them into what we're doing already, we've created incredible results. Like that really just make our businesses way better and way more profitable.
Yeah. Peaceful and profitable. And so on the next video, we're going to dive into like some exact kind of some more how-tos on how to actually live this life, like maybe a little more nuts and bolts on these other shortcuts or these, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think a key thing too in that video is to just know, like, we're going to show ways of implementing some of these things
The way we've done it.
Yeah, but it's not something that's going to like suddenly need a bunch of time from you, or it's not about money, spending lots of money or lots of time. Like, these are things you can do on your own, that we've done on our own, that we're just going to show you how we did it and how you can do it too. So it's not yeah, you don't have to, it's not something that takes a bunch of time or a bunch of money. It's just some systems that are based on these principles that just work.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
All right. Well, if you got questions on this video, or send us a little note. Let us know if you like this. Share it on social. And if the 6 questions of the testimonial, if just comment, let us know that you want those 6 questions, and we'll send them over to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, here's to it.
Bye.
See you guys.